excerpt from That Pilled Species podcast. Okay.
That human extra pair paternity in the West is around 30%.
Okay. Now, what qualifies as extra pair paternity? I have written extensively about extra paired paternity. Okay. I've never mentioned 30% in any of those articles, essays, or my books, actually. In Positive Masculinity, I cover this, so the third book. And my point was this, is that it doesn't have to be a deception. It doesn't have, like, cuckoldry does not, in fact, it's more effective when it's not a deception. We live at the only time in human history where you can have a bastard child and women are rewarded for the bastard child. And I mean, we even have a term for it, bastard, fatherless child, right? We don't know who we don't know who the bastard was. Not necessarily a fatherless child. It was, we don't know who the father is. The mother might not even know who the father is, right? So it is a quote unquote bastard child, like a fatherless child. So if a woman has a baby, let's say out of wedlock, and then you come along and you marry a single mom, have you not effectively then been an active voluntary participant in your own cuckolding? If you have married a single mother, and I'm not saying it's bad or it's good, I'm just saying, if you do so, does that not by definition meet the qualifications of signing up for an extra pair paternity? Because in the book that in Positive Masculinity, I wrote about this. I said there's two kinds of cuckoldry, right? There's proactive and there's retroactive. Okay. Proactive is easy. Okay. Proactive is you're married, you some other guy, and you wanted to pass off the child as someone that's not yours. You basically trick your husband, trick the boyfriend, whatever. There's deception, there's lying and deception involved, meaning that she had sex with somebody else, got pregnant, and it's your baby. And that's how it is. That's proactive cuckoldry, essentially, trying to trick you. Okay. Then there is retroactive cuckoldry, which is she was a single mother. She had a baby out of wedlock, or maybe she could even be a widower, whatever. But she's had a child with another man. And she's like, I'm a single mom. My kid comes first, blah, 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 whatever it is, right? And you go, that's okay. I'm not going to be a stepdad. I'm going to be the dad who stepped up. And you marry her and you're signing up for essentially the same deal, but there's no deception involved. Okay. So what the real problem is not whether it's 3% or 30% or whatever else, because if you go and you take into account the fact that 42% of children are born out of wedlock in the United States, that's greater than 30%. Okay. If you marry one of those single mothers who has had a child out of wedlock, or perhaps she was married, or maybe she wasn't, she's got a baby daddy, and you decide to wife her up, you are now effectively signing up for your own cuckoldry. Simple as that. Now, let me answer the most obvious question. Well, what about if you adopt? Okay, that's fine. You're still effectively cuckolding yourself. It sounds bad, but by definition, you're doing that. Now, here's the difference. The difference is it's you understand what you're getting into. You're not having it foisted upon you. So if you're going to, maybe you, at least if there's like a bad or a good to this, or if there's like sort of like, I don't know, different shades of gray in all this, the proactive cuckoldry ends up being probably the worst of the worst, right? You were deceived. Like that's when was it OBGYN doctors, NICU nurses, if it comes out that the child is not actually the biological the father is not actually the biological father of the child, depending on the state, I think, and it might have changed, but I'm pretty sure most states do this, is they are required by law not to tell that non-biological father that the kid's not theirs. Now, essentially, they're doing that because it is meant to, like, they don't want to have like violence, because they know damn well that if the father finds out, that the odds are he's going to get really pissed off, and he might harm himself, might harm the child, might harm the mom. So they say, okay, it's up to you. We know that this kid ain't his kid, and we're not going to, we're out. We're going to cover our asses legally. We're not going to, I think it's probably more of a legal thing than anything else. But the reason why that's the default is because there's this presumption that the father will go apeshit, and maybe he will, right? They know that. Everything, what's funny is like gender is like this social construct until it's like, no, don't tell the biological father because he's a man and he might lose his shit, right? But then now suddenly gender is binary, right? When we're making laws, gender is always binary. When you're signing up for selective services, gender is always fucking, you got to hang in between your legs. You are signing up for fucking selective services. It doesn't matter what you identify as. There's a between your legs, you're going to sign up for selective services. End of story. But again, more to address Mac and Murphy's point is he is calling out 30, which is ridiculous. I'll give him that, right? I would like to know where the fuck he's hearing this from. But the idea isn't so much about how we come to that number. It's the fact, like I said, if you were to calculate all of the deceptive, proactive cuckoldry and all of the guys who signed up to be a stepfather, to marry a woman who already has kids with another, you're effectively taking over the parental investment responsibilities of another man. You're effectively cuckolding yourself. Take those and throw those into that percentage as well. Maybe that's how they got the 30%. Actually, it would be over 30% if that was the case. But if you have 42% of women having babies out of wedlock, and then you can factor in anywhere between, 3 and 12%. Let's just round it off, 9%. Throw that in there. Now you're over 50%. You want to know why we have a fertility crisis in the United States and have had one since the mid 1970s? Look no further than socially normalizing cuckoldry. And we normalize, there was a time when, it was prior to the sexual revolution, of course, that to have a baby out of wedlock was the most shameful thing you could do as a woman. You bring shame upon your family. When I was, my mother-in-law, my wife's mother, she was born in a time before that, right? And if you had a child out of wedlock, say before, 1955, 1960, somewhere around there, that was shameful. And you had a baby, what would happen is they would take that girl. My mother-in-law told me this. She said they would take that girl and they would put her away. I'm like, what? Put her away? No, they would take her, and the woman, the young woman, would go and stay with the grandparents or stay somewhere until she had the child. And she either the grandparents raised it as their own because they didn't want it to be shameful, like because you had a bastard child, or they put it up for adoption. And then she could go back to high school, or she could go back on with her life, right? She would have like a love child. So that was the whole point, right? The whole reason we have that term, love child, right? Is because you would take the woman, but she would be put away. And then once you had the baby, it was either given up for adoption or the grandparents would raise it as their own and not tell anybody about it. Even if their woman's past menopause, it kind of looks a little weird, right? And then she could be sort of reintegrate back in. Now that was right up until about, I don't know, till the advent of hormonal birth control, and the free love generation. People think that like the free love hippies and the sexual revolution was a result of sort of the baby boom generation. No, they just happened to be the generation that was there when hormonal birth control came into its own. It could have been anybody. It could have been I'm Gen X. It could have been my generation either. It's just how they responded to it at the time. You got to remember, like the baby boom generation didn't invent hormonal birth control, but they were the ones that respond. They were first responders, right? So that was the way things used to be in a pre-sexual revolution world. And a post-sexual revolution world, now if you're a single mother, you're a superhero. People want you. That's a choice. If you want to abort it, that's a choice. If you want to keep it, that's a choice too. You don't need a man. Again, getting back to Dr. Phil, men are superfluous. Women can have kids. 42% of them do without a husband. They got to obviously have a donor, right? But we're still talking about cuckoldry. We're still talking about cuckoldry. So if you're going to go and tell me, 30% this, but I can't believe these ridiculous red pill bends all think that women are just having sex willy-nilly and trying to trick you. No, they don't need to trick you. Women don't have to trick guys in the 21st century into themselves because it's normalized. It's what we do now. You're not the stepdad. You're the dad that stepped up. Right? Yeah.